Today, we are diving deep into a truly game-changing book by Joseph Nguyen called Don't Believe Everything You Think. It's all about uncovering the real source of our stress and suffering, and, more importantly, finding a surprisingly simple way to discover a lasting sense of peace. So let's just jump right in with a big question. Have you ever noticed how two people can be in the exact same situation, but one is totally chill while the other is completely stressed out? Why is that? The answer to this little puzzle is the key to understanding this entire idea.
And the answer, really, is our first big idea. Suffering doesn't come from the world around us. It doesn't come from events. It comes from our thinking about those events. Okay, to really get this, let's paint a picture. Imagine you're in a cozy coffee shop. You know the vibe. The smell of coffee, the quiet buzz of conversation. And in this coffee shop, there are two people sitting at different tables, but experiencing the exact same atmosphere.
But if you look a little closer, you'll see one person is just riddled with tension. Their shoulders are hunched, they're anxiously staring at their phone. And the other person, they're the definition of calm, just slowly sipping their coffee, taking it all in. Same shop, same coffee, so what's the deal? The difference is what's happening between their ears. It's the stories they are telling themselves. You see, the stressed person might be looping a fight they had this morning, while the calm person is just present. Our minds are like little movie directors, constantly creating these stories. And what's wild is that these mental movies can trigger a very real physical fight or flight response. Your heart starts pounding, you get sweaty palms, even when you're just sitting safely in a coffee shop. So, if these internal stories are the problem, what do we do about them? This brings us to probably the most important distinction in the entire book: the difference between thoughts and thinking. And yes, they are two very different things. First up, we have thoughts. Just thoughts. Think of these as random bits of data that just appear in your head. They pop up out of nowhere, you don't ask for them. They're kind of like notifications on your phone. They just show up. And on their own, they're totally neutral. And then we have thinking. Thinking is the active process. It's what you do with a thought once it appears. It's when you grab onto that thought, you judge it, you analyze it, you spin it into a huge story. Basically, you take that little notification and you overthink it to death. So you can see the difference, right? Thoughts are just spontaneous pop-ups. Thinking is when we get lost in the endless judgmental scroll. One is just raw material, the other is where we build our own mental prisons. There's a quote in the book that just nails it. Thoughts create, thinking destroys. Think about it. A random thought, like, hey, I should start a new project. That's creative potential. But the thinking that can follow, oh, I'm not smart enough, that'll never work, what will people say? That's what destroys the idea before it even gets a chance.
All right, so if obsessive thinking is the villain of our story, what's the hero? Well, it's a state the author calls non-thinking. Now, this is really important. Non-thinking does not mean having a completely blank mind. I mean, come on, that's pretty much impossible for most of us. It's more about becoming an observer of your thoughts. You see them pop up, you notice them, but you just let them float on by without grabbing on and getting tangled up in them. I love this analogy from the book. Imagine you have a glass of water filled with dirt. It's all murky and cloudy. You wouldn't try to clear it by stirring it even more, right? That would just make it worse. No, you just set it down, be still, and let all the dirt naturally settle to the bottom. Your mind is that water. Your overthinking is the frantic stirring, and non-thinking is just letting it all settle. Okay, this all sounds really nice in theory, but let's get real. How do we actually start living this way when life is so busy and, chaotic? Let's talk about some practical stuff. One of the first things that changes is how we approach our goals. So many of us are driven by desperation. We're running from something. Our goal is, I have to escape this terrible job. But when you operate from a clearer, more settled place, your goals become inspired. You start running towards something. The question changes to, what kind of work would actually make me feel alive? See the difference? It's a total energy shift. And to help this along, you have to be the gatekeeper of your mind. Think about what you're feeding it every day. This means being really mindful about how much stressful news you're consuming, limiting the time you spend on social media that just makes you feel bad, and making a real effort to hang out with people and be in places that actually lift you up. This next one is a huge one. Nguyen talks about creating an activation ritual. The idea is to set your own internal tone for the day before the world gets its hands on you, before the emails, the texts, and the chaos starts. And look, this doesn't have to be some huge hour-long ceremony. It can be super simple. Maybe it's just 10 minutes of sitting in silence with your coffee. Maybe it's writing down a few thoughts in a journal, taking a quick walk outside, or even just reading one page of an inspiring book. The point is to connect with that quiet place inside you first. This whole approach is also amazing for changing bad habits. Instead of just trying to use willpower, which, let's be honest, usually doesn't last, you get curious. When you feel that urge for a bad habit, step 1 is to just notice the feeling that's triggering it. Step 2, ask yourself, what am I really looking for here? Am I bored? Am I stressed? And once you know the real need, you can move to step 3, consciously choosing a healthier way to meet it. And as we start to put these things into practice, we get closer and closer to the ultimate destination of this whole journey, which is learning how to surrender and find a deep, real sense of peace. And that leads us to this really radical idea: suffering is optional. Now, let's be super clear. This does not mean that pain is optional. Pain, loss, sadness, those things are a part of being human. They're gonna happen. But the suffering we build around those events, that, it turns out, is something we can actually do something about. There's one last analogy that explains this so perfectly. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you trip on a tree root. Ouch! That's pain. It's sharp, it's real, it just happened. But suffering is what happens next. It's when you fall into a thorny bush and, in your panic to get out, you struggle and thrash around, getting more and more tangled and scratched up. The root is the unavoidable pain. The thorny bush, that's the web of our own thinking. I'm so stupid. Why does this always happen to me? And that's the part that's op. And what's so fascinating is that this isn't just a spiritual idea. Some of the greatest innovators in history tapped into this state of non-thinking. Thomas Edison used to nap while holding steel balls in his hands so that right as he was drifting off, they'd fall, wake him up, and he could capture the ideas from that creative space. Albert Einstein would play his violin. They knew you had to get out of your own way and stop forcing it to let the real breakthroughs come through. So really, it all comes down to this. We have so much more influence over our own peace of mind than we think. It all starts with learning to see the difference between a random thought and the destructive act of overthinking. And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. What amazing ideas, what solutions, what miracles might just show up in your life if you could let go of the need to control every little thought and just surrender to the unknown?